All right. So today we are going to be taking a look at the um, Senate elections for 2020, of course. So last week we looked at the presidential election, 3 weeks from the election. Today we are now 2 weeks from the general election. We're going to be looking at the Senate. Um, I, I'll definitely release at least one more prediction for the presidential election before November 3rd. But not much has really changed from last week. Odds odds pretty much keep going up for Joe Biden, but that has a lot more to do just with the fact that we're getting closer to the election. So anyway, and things get more apparent the closer we get. So we are going to fill in the safe races. So when we put the safe races, just those, on the map, it provides a somewhat favorable map for the Democrats. 44 to 41 is what I have here with those seats. So it looks pretty good for Democrats. But that's not really the case because New Hampshire, I would say, is likely Democrat. At this point, that's probably the only one I would really put there. Mississippi, I would put as likely Republican. Actually, South Carolina, I will come back to. Mississippi, Kansas, Texas, Kentucky, I would put these all in the likely Republican column. And that already narrows it up, 45 to 44. So it's already a lot closer just with the safes and the likelies. That's going to be a theme here, is that it's close. So South Carolina, of course, is going to be a state, and I should mention Kentucky. Of course, this is one where, a lot of people want Mitch McConnell out of office. They want him to lose. It's interesting, the fact that Amy McGrath has gotten so much money, but is still not really at all favored to win that race. Most people think it'll be McConnell. I think it'll be McConnell by a fairly wide margin. South Carolina is a similar story. So a lot of people want Lindsey Graham to lose. Jamie Harrison, his Democratic opponent, has made a lot of money for his campaign, but it's not really changing much. It still looks like Graham is going to win. I would actually put this as a likely race. Now, I could see arguments for South Carolina, maybe Kentucky, maybe Texas, that they should be leans, but at this point in time, I would put them in as likely Republican. Then we get to the leans at this point. I don't have any other likelies. So for the Democrats, the leans, I would say Michigan is one. Gary Peters should win, although his odds are a little bit closer than you might expect. But I do think he'll win, although it could actually be narrower than the amount Biden wins Michigan by, which I do think Biden will win Michigan, but that's unrelated. Anyway, Arizona, Mark Kelly is getting a ton of money. He's getting a lot of money to fight Martha McSally, and it's working. Arizona is a state that, nobody really thought it was going to be looking this Democratic just a couple years. In 2016, there wasn't really much of a chance of Clinton winning the state. And then in the 2018 Senate elections, the Democrats won, Kyrsten Sinema. And now it looks like they're going to win the other Senate seat, and it looks like Joe Biden is going to win that state in the presidential election. So it's turning Democratic, and I do think of the races this year, you've got House races where I think the Democrats will probably hold on to 5 seats. And then you've got the presidential race. But this is the one I'm most certain about the Democrats winning, and I will put that as a lean Democratic state. Now, as for the Republicans, I do have a couple leans for them. Alabama, which I could also see arguments of likely for Alabama, but just because it's an incumbent, and incumbents tend to do a lot of times better than, even if the polls show that they won't. So I would put that as a lean, but you could certainly argue that it should be likely. Then we get to Georgia, where we've got 2 races, and I think both of them are going to be lean Republican. Now, these were 2 seats where a year or two ago, the Democrats thought maybe they could win, and that this was maybe their best chance to taking the Senate. But at this point, it doesn't really look good for the Democrats winning Georgia, either of those seats. Colorado, we're going to move on to tilts. Colorado, I would put as a tilt Democratic state. I do think John Hickenlooper is going to win, and again, the reason I have this as a tilt versus, say, a lean is more to do with the fact that he's against an incumbent in Cory Gardner. Now, North Carolina, a similar story. Cal Cunningham, despite a scandal, it looks like he's still going to win. He has pretty decent chances of winning. I think he's still ahead consistently in the polls, ahead of Thom Tillis. So Cal Cunningham probably wins North Carolina. That leaves 3 races that I see as very competitive, but I actually think that the Republicans will win Montana. I think I have it as a tilt right now. And Maine and Iowa, I'm going to leave these as toss-ups. Maine is a race that's been very, very close. We know that Susan Collins is facing an uphill battle. Just the fact that she's a Republican in a what would be considered a blue state by most, I would think. So it's already an uphill battle for her, and it looks like she's probably going to lose to Sarah Gideon, but it's going to be close, and I'm going to leave it as a toss-up. In Iowa, you've got Teresa Greenfield, who is running against Joni Ernst, the incumbent senator. Ernst is not all that popular. It wasn't long ago, maybe a few weeks, that Ernst was the favorite. And before that, she was the favorite by far. But now, most polls again say that Greenfield is going to win. The odds say that she's probably going to win, but it is very, very narrow margins we're talking about. So I would again have to leave that as a toss-up. So I would leave these two as toss-ups. Again, if I had to decide, I would say the Democrats they're favored to win both right now, but I will leave them as toss-ups for the time being. So this is my Senate map 2 weeks from the election. Keep in mind, by the way, that because Arizona is a special election, that Mark Kelly could be seated by the end of November. I think he will be seated by the end of November should he win, which is going to be very significant in terms of blocking Amy Coney Barrett from the Supreme Court if the Democrats can hold off on her nomination until the lame duck session at least. They could probably, should there be one, they could probably get another vote, but even that would actually not be enough. That would only be 50. They would still need someone else, but it could help. So that's an important one to watch for on the basis of the Supreme Court. But this is the Senate prediction I have. So let me know what you think. Who do you think is going to win the Senate? And we'll see what happens.